One may expect old Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn to come floating down at any moment, but it's not a lazy summer on the Mississippi. It's a cold Sunday at Pittsburgh's Three Rivers Stadium. One must wonder what Mark Twain would have written had Tom and Huck chanced upon this scene prior to the Steeler-Brown showdown. Perhaps the famous American humorist would have written, "Me and Huck must have got plumb lost, 'cause we seen this dancing bee being followed by a bunch of folks hopping up and down outside of this big cement building. One of them even had wheels on his feet." Of course, the behavior of Pittsburgh fans defies literary description. These are followers of the four-time world champions, fans who remember the last time their Steelers met the Browns a few weeks earlier in blustery Cleveland. 5 All-Pro Steelers were unable to play that day. Yet reserves Cliff Stout, number 18, and Theo Bell, number 83, played magnificently for the team of the decade. Despite numerous injuries to key personnel, the Steelers, on the strength of a 1-yard blast by Greg Hawthorne, led 13-7 by halftime. The Steelers seemed headed for their 8th straight victory over their division rivals, but Cleveland quarterback Brian Sipe rallied his Browns in the second half. This diving catch by number 82, Ozzie Newsome, got the Browns close, and then Sipe connected with Greg Pruitt for the score. The Browns dominated the second half, and with minutes remaining, Sipe hit Newsome once more for a heart-stopping 27-26 Cleveland victory. October 26 was indeed a glorious day for the Cleveland Browns and their 80,000 fans. But that dramatic victory is in the past. And if Cleveland is to win the division this year, Brian Sipe knows that a win in sunny Pittsburgh would be a grand step towards achieving that goal. If there is any question regarding Pittsburgh's purpose this Sunday, the expression of All-Pro Steeler linebacker Jack Lambert should clarify any ambiguities. This is undoubtedly the most important game of the 1980 season so far for the Men of Steel. From Pittsburgh, it's Cleveland's Cardiac Kids versus the 4-time champion Lords of the Rings on the NFL Game of the Week. Cleveland's defense would not be facing the same Steeler offense it confronted in October. Terry Bradshaw, Lynn Swann, and Franco Harris were injured then. They're healthy now. On the second play of the game, the greatest clutch fullback in football, number 32, Franco Harris, made history. Franco's 6-yard gain wasn't earth-shattering, but it was record-breaking, for on that run he joined 2 other number 32s, Jim Brown and O.J. Simpson, as the only men to ever rush for 9,000 yards. 6 plays later, the Steeler drive ended, however. Clinton Burrell's interception and sideline return gave the Browns a first down at the Steeler 33. Cleveland failed to capitalize. The would-be drive resulted in a missed Don Cockcroft field goal. The consequences were painful. Not only did the visitors shank a golden opportunity, but the Steelers were strengthened by Cleveland's failure, as 2 All-Pros, Lynn Swann and Terry Bradshaw, combined their talents to pick apart the Brown defense. Both were sidelined in the last meeting. They made up for lost time. Terry and Lynn clicked 3 times for 35 yards as the Steelers marched methodically towards the lead. When Lynn was unavailable, Terry took it himself. Finally, on the first play of the second quarter, the 16th play of the marathon drive, Bradshaw found talented reserve Jim Smith from 10 yards out. Jim Smith has been the most consistent performer for the Steelers this season. He has shined in the absence of All-Pro John Stallworth. Another look reveals that perfect timing on a crossing pattern is virtually impossible to defense, as number 22, Clarence Scott, found out. Pittsburgh established a 7-0 lead with nearly a full quarter to play before the half. The Browns had yet to establish 1 first down. The Steel Curtain sought to continue its domination of the line of scrimmage. A pair of Mike Pruitt runs netted 37, and then the explosive Browns did what they do best: pass. Number 33, Reggie Rucker, split the Steelers' secondary that so far this season has been Pittsburgh's Achilles heel. In the past, the Steelers' deep defenders punished and humiliated receivers. In 1980, they have been a unit highly susceptible to the long pass, as a repeat shows. Donnie Shell, number 31, was victimized for 39 yards. On Sipes' next completion, Shell was beaten for 6. There was some good news and some bad news for Cleveland coach Sam Ratigliano. First, the bad news. Don Cockroft missed the extra point, and the Steelers still led 7-6. Now the good news. Bradshaw quickly served up his second interception of the half. Again, Clinton Burrell had short-circuited Bradshaw, claiming his second interception of the first half. The Browns took over on the Steeler 44, but could gain only 7 yards on 3 plays. With Johnny Evans in punt formation, Pittsburgh was caught napping. For after running up to center, Evans quickly handed to Dino Hall for a 19-yard gain on 4th down. Dino Hall is easily the smallest Brown, packing merely 165 pounds and standing but 5'7". His run, however, was vital and set up Cleveland's second touchdown of the game, a bit of one-handed magic by Dave Logan, number 85. The Browns had taken a 13-7 lead after Cockroft's successful point after. Again, Donnie Shell had been the victim as Cleveland had assumed an advantage for the first time in the game. Lanky Dave Logan is not only Sipes' favorite target, but has been a Steeler nemesis over the last 5 years. In 9 games, Logan has caught 28 passes for 477 yards and 5 touchdowns against Pittsburgh. Trailing 13-7, the Steeler Legion hoped for a comeback before the half. What they received in the final 3 minutes of the half was ragged play by both Sipe and Bradshaw. Brian Sipe was the first to falter. Mike Wagner became Sipes' unlikely receiver and returned the errant toss to the Brown 31. The next victim of some not-so-professional play was Terry Bradshaw, who found Franco Harris wide open. Harris unfortunately bobbled the ball, allowing Charlie Hall to steal away at least a Steeler field goal attempt with less than a minute remaining in the half. Three Bradshaw interceptions in one half happen about as often as Jack Lambert's smiles. After 30 minutes, the Browns were doing the smiling as they led 13-7 and were apparently on their way to a series sweep over the champions. They had Pittsburgh in a corner, and football's most awesome team of the 70s would have to punch their way out. The beckoning of a new decade has shattered the aura of invincibility that surrounded the Pittsburgh Steelers in the 1970s. Chuck Noll's team of the decade has left its place in football history behind and returned with a thud to the rest of the NFL. Much of the blame has fallen on the once indestructible Steel Curtain. Now vulnerable, the Steeler defense ranked last in the AFC at stopping the pass. There was nothing to indicate that things would be different against Brian Sipe, the conference's top-rated passer. Robin Cole, number 56, responded with an interception on Sipe's first throw of the second half. Although a Steeler penalty nullified the play, Pittsburgh had set the tone early. After a lackluster first half, Terry Bradshaw immediately looked for the big play downfield. But a completion to Jim Smith, number 86, was followed by a sack of Bradshaw by nickelback Judson Flint, number 20, and another Steeler drive was halted. Another look at Flint's blitz reveals that number 49, Clinton Burrell, was also blitzing. When Franco Harris picked up Burrell's charge, the path to Bradshaw was cleared for Flint. While Steeler fortunes have dimmed in 1980, the Cleveland Browns have been glowing. Co-leaders of the AFC Central, the Browns' brilliant performance has featured the luster of perhaps the NFL's best quarterback, Brian Sipe. Sipe threw for 300 yards in each of his last 3 games against Pittsburgh, in addition to accounting for 12 Brown touchdowns. Midway through the third period, it looked as if Sipe would match his previous performances. Using his backs and tight end Ozzie Newsome, number 82, Sipe found the wrinkles in the Steel Curtain that had been apparent all season. Wrinkles in the Steel Curtain? Jack Lambert had watched his pride and joy take enough abuse. It was time for Lambert and the men of Steel to make their stand. Lambert's aggressive play stopped the Browns dead in their tracks and forced Cleveland to attempt a field goal. Don Cockroft tried to add an important 3 points to the Browns' tenuous 13-7 lead. Cockroft could not complete a Cleveland drive that had taken 5 minutes off the clock. The Browns had wasted a golden opportunity. The team of the decade would have made its opponents regret it, but the 1980 Steelers would not be able to capitalize. The 3 previous games between Pittsburgh and Cleveland were marked by offensive firepower and an abundance of touchdowns. This game saw both teams move the ball well, but both had trouble putting the ball in the end zone. As the fourth quarter unfolded, Terry Bradshaw began to find the open spots in the Browns secondary. But as he did in the first half, Bradshaw stifled Steeler hopes with his 4th interception of the game. Clarence Scott's diving catch of an errant Bradshaw toss gave Cleveland another opportunity. But once again, the Steeler defense met the challenge. Jack Ham, number 59, shut down the Browns' running game, while Pittsburgh's secondary continued to take away Cleveland's most dangerous weapon, sight throwing long to his wide receivers. A resurgent Steel Curtain had controlled the Browns' explosive passing attack. It was up to Terry Bradshaw to make the next move. Since returning from an injury, Terry Bradshaw has played 2 of his worst games since the early years of his pro career. If a victory against Cleveland was to be achieved, Bradshaw would have to snap out of his slump in the 4th quarter. The scenario began to develop. Bradshaw went to Lynn Swann over the middle consecutively as another Steeler comeback took shape. For Swann, the game's top clutch receiver, it was part of a day that saw him catch 9 passes for 139 yards. For Cleveland coach Sam Ratigliano, it was part of a day that saw the Browns miss numerous chances in the second half. How much longer could his defense hold Terry Bradshaw and the Pittsburgh Steelers in check? With the ball at the Cleveland 1-yard line, Ratigliano would get his answer. The Browns got lucky as Jim Smith dropped a sure touchdown, but Pittsburgh had one more down to go just 1 yard. Late in the 4th quarter, a Steeler touchdown was a good bet. Cleveland's defense had held. The Steelers could not go 1 yard in 2 plays. With less than 3 minutes remaining, Steeler hopes rested with their defense. Pittsburgh kept the Browns deep in their own territory, forcing a Cleveland punt. Rather than risk giving Bradshaw the ball with good field position, the Browns opted for the safety, cutting their lead to 13-9. But taking them out of a potentially damaging circumstance. The Steelers got the ball with 1:44 left, trailing by 4. Pittsburgh needed a touchdown. Bradshaw held the key. No quarterback in football improvises better than Bradshaw when assigned patterns break down. Bradshaw made the most of this quality as he turned desperate situations into Steeler big plays. Bradshaw's magic came back to haunt him. His strike to Swann at the Cleveland 1-yard line was negated by a Steeler penalty. Bradshaw, in his desire to evade the rush, had crossed the line of scrimmage. Steeler fortunes were set back, but only for 1 play. Bradshaw, this time with good protection, found Swann over the middle. The completion put Pittsburgh at the Browns' 6-yard line with 25 seconds to go. But another setback befell the Steelers. Bradshaw injured his leg and appeared to be unable to continue. It was a scene that had been played before in Three Rivers Stadium. A hurting Bradshaw helped off the field, only to return to lead the Steelers to victory. Bradshaw was not about to disappoint the home crowd. With 17 seconds to go, Pittsburgh scored. It was a play strongly reminiscent of those made by the team of the decade. For the 1980 Steelers, it was a play that saved them from something they're unaccustomed to, probable elimination from the playoff picture during the regular season. The Cleveland Browns could only sit and wonder if their fate in the AFC Central was to finish third behind the Steelers and Houston Oilers, considered by some to be the two best teams in football. For Cleveland, the way that they lost could prove to be more damaging than the loss itself. The Browns had Pittsburgh beaten for the second time, only to see it blow up in their faces. While Pittsburgh survived a game that they had to win, Cleveland suffered their toughest defeat of the season. If the Browns hope to make the playoffs in 1980, they must leave this game behind and rebound against Cincinnati this week.